Are you a youth athlete between the ages of about 8 and 16 or 17? Or perhaps a manager, coach, or parent of somebody who is a youth athlete in these age groups? Well, if you are, you need to watch this video, because in this video, I want to talk through the 5 key stretches that every youth and adolescent athlete must be doing to keep themselves on the sport and exercise field. So let's go. Thanks for checking out this channel. My name's John. I'm the head therapist here at John W Sports Injury. And at this channel, we're looking to do 3 simple things. Help you to understand your body so you can get rid of any pain or weakness and strive forward to hit your health and well-being goals. But this video, I think, is a crucial video for anybody who is working with youth adolescent athletes, or if you are a youth or adolescent athlete yourself, you need to be watching these 5 stretches. Now, before you dive into the comments and tell me, well, surely there's more stretches they should be doing, yes, I completely agree. But what I wanted to do is, if I had to pick out my 5 key ones, these are the 5 key ones. Why 5? Well, in these 5, they are going to take 5 minutes of your time. So a time that can be committed by any youth athlete. But what we're really looking to do here is make sure we're doing all we can to prevent growth-related pain as we go through the stages of puberty. And in particular, we're talking about 2 key conditions. The first being Osgood-Schlatter disease and the second being Sever's disease. Now, I'm not going to talk in too much details about those particular conditions because I have lots of video on my YouTube channel where we dive into those particular conditions in more detail. But I want to give you a quick fire video with 5 stretches that you can be putting in to the everyday life of the youth athlete. And I'm going to explain why they're just so important. So first of all, I'll kick off with perhaps what might be our most important stretch. Why is it our most important stretch? And particularly if you're between the ages of about 10 and 16, well, these are the muscles that are acting upon the knee, directly pulling on the knee. And they're directly pulling on a particular part of the knee that unfortunately leads to Osgood-Schlatter disease. What simply is happening here is this part of the knee that we call the tibial tuberosity in the growing athlete hasn't turned to bone yet. It's a growth plate, which means that it allows the bone to grow, and then when we hit adulthood, that turns into bone, a process that we call ossification. Now, our quadriceps muscles are the muscles that are directly attached into that growth plate. So we need to be stretching those. And in order to stretch those well, the best way to do this is to lay on your front and slowly pull your foot up to your bottom. Now, throughout this video, you want to be holding all of these stretches for 30 seconds. By doing this stretch laying on your front, it allows you not to cheat. It allows to keep the pelvis nice and flat while we complete that stretch. And you should be feeling that pull in the front of your leg. If it's difficult for you to do that and you can't reach your ankle, you can modify this stretch by laying on your side and doing the same stretch by pulling your foot towards your bottom. But it will allow you to tip your hips slightly forwards. It makes it less of a stretch, but it will allow you to complete that stretch. And once you then get comfortable doing that, you can then return to the original stretch. But this is a key one. These quadricep muscles come down and directly act upon that knee. They will directly pull on the tibial tuberosity. So we need to be making sure that it's not being pulled on with too much force. And these muscles, when they're working, when they're contracting, bring about kicking, jumping, running motion. So if you're doing those sports, it makes sense that we need to make sure that we're stretching those out well. The next stretch that we need to make sure that we're focusing on is our hamstring stretch. Why the hamstrings? Well, the hamstrings form what we call an antagonistic pair with the quadriceps, which means that they need to work together. They need to work in harmony. I often call these the sibling muscles because, like any sibling relationship, we need them to work in harmony if everything's going to be good. So we stress the importance of the quadricep muscles because they're directly acting upon that tibial tuberosity. But due to this antagonistic relationship, the hamstrings are indirectly acting upon that area as well. So again, we need to make sure that we're stretching those out well. I see lots of people suffering from Osgood-Schlatter disease who have perfectly flexible quads, but as soon as we test those hamstrings, they can become quite problematic and tight. And we realize that this is the problem and we have this unharmonious relationship. So 2 ways of stretching out the hamstrings. Firstly, we can do this by going down onto one knee, putting up the stretching leg out in front of us and keeping that knee nice and straight. I like this version of the stretch because you can move the toe position into 3 different positions. Why is this important? Because we've got 3 different hamstrings. So you can really get a nice stretch and isolate each of the hamstrings. Reminder that we're holding these stretches for 30 seconds. If we find that difficult, if you're somebody who's suffering with Osgood-Schlatter disease and it's difficult to go onto your knees, then what we can do is simply lay on our back and lift our leg up in the air. Crucial point here, we need to be making sure that that knee is straight and that the hips are flat on the floor. If we change that position, we're compensating and the stretch won't be as effective. The next stretch that we need to do, and these are some of the crucial ones if we're perhaps a little bit younger than the age groups I mentioned. So if you're 8 to 12 years old, we have another condition that becomes particularly relevant called Sever's disease. And this is when we get a problem in the heel area. Now, this is very much the same as Osgood-Schlatter's disease, but at this lower side. But here, rather than having the quadriceps muscles acting upon the growth plate, we have our calf complex, our group of 2 main muscles that use our Achilles tendon that attach directly into the growth plate of the foot. So we need to make sure these 2 muscles, the gastrocnemius and the soleus, are being stretched out well. How do we do that? Well, we can do this by, works quite nicely to be leaning up against the wall. We don't have to be leaning up against the wall, but what that does is encourage the motion that we need. We want to make sure that all of our toes are pointing in a straight line. This is something that particularly younger athletes find difficult to do, but that is how we get the better stretch. So toes in a nice straight line, heels need to be super glued to the floor. We don't want to make, another common thing to happen is that the heels will lift up off the floor. Make sure that those heels are flat on the floor, and then we bend the front leg forward, going into a lunge type motion. But it's the back leg, the leg that initially is being kept straight for the gastrocnemius, where we should be feeling a stretch. We're holding this for 30 seconds. Then we can nicely modify that stretch to catch the second muscle that uses that Achilles tendon, which is called our soleus. So what we're looking to do here is bring the legs slightly closer together and bend both legs. I always encourage people or say that a prompt for this is imagine you're trying to sit in a chair behind you and keeping those heels flat on the floor. And you should feel that stretch in the same type of area, the lower back of the leg, but perhaps slightly lower than the previous gastrocnemius stretch, holding it for 30 seconds. And then the final and 5th stretch that we should look at be doing is our glute muscles. Why the glute muscles? Well, really they control all of our lower limb stability. So really, I think that they are the driving force behind a lot of what we do when it comes to lower limbs. So a really nice one to be stretching out. My favorite way of doing this is simply laying on your back, keeping your shoulders flat on the floor whilst you bring one leg over the other leg. And what you'll see here is by moving that knee position, we can really find the sweet spot and the great place to get that good gluteal stretch, holding that for 30 seconds. So they are the 5 key stretches. Now, as I said at the start of the video, are there more stretches that we should be doing in a perfect world? Yes, completely. But what I wanted to do was make this as simple as possible, talk about those muscles that are directly and indirectly acting upon those growth plate areas. So in order to prevent these conditions like Osgood-Schlatter's and Sever's disease, and also when we're stretching each muscle for 30 seconds and we've got 2 legs, we know that that's going to take 5 minutes. So it's only a 5-minute commitment, but my important factor around stretching is it's not something we don't want to do it 2, 3, 4 times in one day and then leave it for 3 or 4 days. Great if we can be doing it multiple times a day, but better is little and often. So if you can commit 5 minutes a day and stretch those muscles out every day, that is going to leave you with a much reduced risk of striving forwards towards conditions like Osgood-Schlatter's disease and Sever's disease, and allow you to stay on that sporting field longer. Has this been helpful? Are you going to go and try those stretches yourself? If you are, you've made it this far through the video and you want others to see these stretches as well, you can do me a huge favour by hitting that like button down below. And if you haven't subscribed to our content, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification, because then we can let you know as soon as we drop our next video. Speaking of more videos, here's another one to help you on your health and well-being journey, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.